It's Akon. I'll give you a hint. Listen, man, it appears Caitlin Clark has finally helped these WNBA owners make a couple dollars. Not a whole lot, but a little something after nearly 30 years. Now, we have to be aware, you guys.
However, alongside the announcement, there is a notable absence of detailed financial transparency, and that omission is exactly what has fueled skepticism among analysts, agents, and even some fans. While the league publicly confirmed that it reached the required benchmark, it declined to release full financial documentation verifying the underlying revenue totals. No comprehensive balance sheets were shared. No itemized income breakdowns were provided. And the precise revenue figure needed to trigger the payout was not disclosed either. Those decisions were also reported publicly, which means the lack of detail is not speculation but acknowledged fact. Now, to be fair, private professional sports leagues are not obligated to publish their internal accounting records for public consumption. Many major leagues keep detailed financial statements confidential, sharing them only with ownership groups and union auditors under strict agreements. So the absence of public documentation is not automatically suspicious. It falls within standard business practice. Still, timing matters, and context shapes perception. Because this disclosure arrived during tense labor negotiations, some observers see it less as a neutral financial update and more as a calculated message inserted into the bargaining environment. Negotiations between league executives and the Players Association have reportedly grown increasingly intense. Salary caps, revenue percentages, benefit structures, and long-term compensation models remain unresolved topics. The current collective bargaining agreement is scheduled to expire after the 2025 season, which creates a natural deadline pressure. As that expiration approaches, both sides are attempting to strengthen their leverage. Leagues emphasize costs and sustainability. Players emphasize growth and value. Each statistic released publicly can subtly influence how fans, sponsors, and media interpret the dispute. That is why this announcement carries strategic weight beyond its dollar amount. By confirming that financial targets were reached, the league demonstrates measurable progress and stability. At the same time, by withholding granular data, it maintains control over how that progress is interpreted. Supporters of the players argue that the milestone proves the business is healthier than critics claimed. Supporters of ownership argue that a single triggered clause does not necessarily mean long-term profitability is guaranteed. Both interpretations can exist simultaneously, which is precisely why this moment has become such a focal point. It isn't just about whether revenue increased. It's about who gets to define what that increase truly means.
WNBA. Here was put out. Remember, this is being put out by the WNBPA. This is on Underdog WNBA. Katie Barnes. WNBA generated enough revenue in 2025 to trigger revenue sharing with players for the first time. For the first time. Per Katie Barnes, teams will receive a pot of $8 million to be dispersed among players. So,
stepping back, what makes this entire situation so compelling is how it encapsulates the evolving economics of modern professional sports. Leagues today operate in an environment shaped by media rights deals, digital streaming platforms, global marketing, and athlete-driven branding. Revenue no longer depends solely on ticket sales, it flows from sponsorship integrations, merchandise collaborations, and international distribution. As those revenue streams expand, so does the complexity of determining how income should be divided among stakeholders. This is why a single announcement about revenue sharing can ripple far beyond its immediate financial impact. It influences negotiating psychology, shapes public perception, and establishes precedent. If the league has crossed the threshold once, players will naturally argue it can do so again. Owners, meanwhile, may counter that one successful year does not guarantee permanent financial stability. Both arguments are rooted in legitimate business reasoning, which is precisely why reaching an agreement can be so challenging. Another factor complicating matters is momentum. Professional sports leagues rely heavily on maintaining public interest. Periods of growth create optimism, while labor disputes can stall that momentum. Neither side wants to be blamed for disrupting progress, especially when fan engagement is rising. That shared incentive could ultimately encourage compromise, even if negotiations appear tense in the short term. Historically, many major sports agreements have been finalized close to deadlines, after months of public disagreement followed by last-minute resolution. In the end, the $8 million distribution is more than just a financial figure. It represents a symbolic milestone, a negotiating tool, and a public relations statement all at once. Whether it proves to be a turning point leading to a smoother agreement or simply another chapter in a prolonged bargaining battle remains to be seen. What cannot be denied is that it has already changed the conversation. The league has demonstrated measurable growth, the players have gained a concrete example supporting their demands, and observers now have a real-world benchmark to analyze rather than speculation. In labor negotiations, moments like this rarely settle debates outright, but they often define the direction those debates take next.
On ESPN by Katie Barnes. Now, mind you, this is information coming from the WNBPA. We still have to hear what the WNBA ownership side has to say about this. Here it says WNBA made enough money for revenue sharing. For the first time, let me pause this right here. Maybe I can't, whatever. For the first time in history, the WNBA
union leadership has been quick to frame the development as validation of the players' long-standing argument that their value to the league has been underestimated. Brianna Turner, who serves as treasurer for the Players Association, described the milestone as tangible proof that the athletes' contributions translate directly into measurable financial growth. From her perspective, the payout is not simply a bonus, it is evidence supporting the broader case players have been making during negotiations. If revenue targets can be reached now, she argues, then improved compensation structures are justified moving forward. Union President Nneka Agwamike has echoed similar sentiments, emphasizing that the union's role is to represent every player collectively, not just a handful of stars. She highlighted how athletes have increasingly pooled their name, image, and likeness rights into joint licensing structures, allowing the group as a whole to benefit from marketing deals and sponsorship packages. That collective approach, she noted, strengthens negotiating power because it turns individual visibility into shared leverage. In her view, revenue sharing is not merely a financial clause, it is recognition that players themselves are central drivers of league growth. Under the framework established in the 2020 agreement, athletes receive 50% of what is defined as shared revenue. That figure is calculated only after a predetermined baseline is exceeded and after 30% is deducted for expenses. In other words, the $8 million pool represents the portion remaining once operational costs and threshold requirements have already been accounted for. Reaching that point indicates that revenue surpassed the baseline by a margin large enough to activate the clause. For players, that milestone strengthens their negotiating narrative. They can now point to a real example, not a projection or promise, showing that growth is happening. For ownership groups, the same milestone can be interpreted as proof that the existing system already rewards players when financial performance improves. This dual interpretation is why both sides cite the same data while drawing different conclusions. It illustrates how numbers alone rarely settle labor disputes. What matters just as much as the story each side tells about what those numbers represent.
Fighting for makes sense and how we should keep fighting, WNBPA treasurer Brianna Turner told ESPN. Under the 2020 CBA, players will receive 50% of shared revenue, defined in the CBA as the amount of revenue over a predetermined threshold minus 30% for expenses. Okay, and this is just a bunch of numbers talk, but Caitlin Clark, it appears the WNBA, this is the WNBPA side again, Caitlin Clark has brought in a
Pause right there for a moment and really absorb what just happened, because the energy surrounding this development is exactly what deserves serious attention. After nearly 3 decades of financial struggles, operational losses, and constant skepticism about long-term sustainability, the WNBA has announced something unprecedented in its history. For the very first time since the league's founding, a revenue-sharing trigger has officially been activated for players. That means a total pool of $8 million is now set to be distributed across all 13 franchises. According to league officials, this milestone was reached because financial performance targets for the 2025 season were finally achieved. On the surface, that sounds like a breakthrough moment, the kind of announcement leagues dream of making after years of investment and patience. But once you move past the celebratory headline, the situation becomes far more layered and far more complex. The announcement itself didn't come from independent auditors, outside analysts, or investigative reporters. It came directly from the league. That detail matters, especially because of the timing. This news arrived in the middle of what many insiders consider one of the most intense and contentious collective bargaining negotiation periods women's professional sports has ever seen. Whenever financial milestones are revealed during active labor negotiations, observers naturally begin asking deeper questions. Is this purely a factual disclosure meant to inform players and fans about league growth? Or is it also a strategic communication designed to shape leverage, perception, and negotiating power at a critical moment? Labor negotiations in professional sports are rarely just about numbers. They're about optics, influence, and narrative control. When a league announces positive financial performance while negotiating with its players' union, that message can serve multiple purposes simultaneously. It reassures sponsors and investors that the business is stabilizing. It signals to fans that the sport is thriving. And perhaps most importantly, it sets the stage for framing upcoming contract discussions. If revenue is rising, players can argue they deserve a larger share. If expenses remain high, owners can argue caution is still necessary. That push and pull is the heart of every major sports labor negotiation. So this moment isn't just about $8 million being distributed. It represents a symbolic turning point. For years, critics claimed the league could never reach a financial threshold strong enough to activate revenue sharing. Now that it has happened, even once, the entire tone of negotiations shifts. The question is no longer whether the league can grow financially. The question now is how that growth should be divided, who deserves credit for it, and what percentage of future gains should go to players versus ownership. That's why this announcement is being dissected so closely. It's not just a milestone. It's leverage, symbolism, and strategy all wrapped into one historic headline.
They should be getting more right now. I definitely believe this is a tactic being used in this current moment. But make no mistake about it, the players wouldn't be getting this or asking for all this if it were not for Caitlin Clark, because without Caitlin Clark, they would have never hit the threshold. If it wasn't for Caitlin Clark, they would never hit the threshold. Let's keep it real. You know what I'm saying? If we gonna do something, let's be for real.
They deserve their money. They deserve their cut. Sure. They've helped build this league into what it is. That's the one side. The other side is that the owners have been here too. And
the players' current proposal for the next agreement reportedly includes a request for roughly 27.5% of total league revenue, which would mark a notable shift from the existing structure. That figure has become a central talking point because it reflects a broader philosophical difference about how the league's future should be financed. From the athlete's standpoint, rising visibility, higher attendance, and stronger media interest justify a larger guaranteed share. From ownership's perspective, long-term sustainability requires caution, especially given decades of historical losses prior to recent growth. Union leaders have emphasized that they do not want a work stoppage, but they have also made it clear they must be prepared for that possibility if negotiations stall. Preparing for a strike does not necessarily mean one will happen, it simply means contingency plans exist. Still, the mere acknowledgement of that possibility underscores how serious these talks have become. Labor disputes in professional sports can reshape entire seasons, affect sponsorship agreements, and influence fan engagement. Both sides understand the stakes, which is why every public statement is carefully worded. Some analysts believe the timing of the revenue-sharing announcement may itself be part of the negotiation chess match. By highlighting that financial targets were reached, players can argue the league has entered a new economic phase and should adjust compensation accordingly. The message is straightforward: if profitability thresholds can now be met, then compensation models designed for leaner years should evolve as well. Whether or not that interpretation proves persuasive will depend on what additional financial data emerges during closed-door discussions. What is certain is that this moment has shifted the tone of negotiations. Instead of debating hypothetical growth, both sides are now dealing with documented results. That changes leverage calculations. It also changes expectations. Once a milestone is achieved, it becomes a reference point for future demands. The $8 million distribution may be modest compared to other leagues, but symbolically it carries enormous weight. It signals that the financial conversation surrounding the league is entering a new era, one where growth is no longer theoretical, and where the question is not whether revenue can increase, but how that increase should be shared.